Welcome back to Hooked on Wellness. As you can see, we're coming to you from our office today instead of the studio.
Yes, and in our previous episode, we began an important conversation about how patients can better understand their health information, prepare for their appointments, ask questions, and communicate more confidently with their healthcare team.
So today, we're picking up right where we left off. Although we're here in the office for this introduction, the rest of the show continues from our conversation in the studio. So let's go.
I know sometimes the information can feel like the clinic is disorganized. If I fill out a form online, then I arrive and have to write the same thing again. I may wonder whether anyone has even looked at what I've done already online.
That's understandable, but it's important to review information with patients. Sometimes systems don't connect well, and the clinics may need to update something or get signatures or ask more detailed questions about safety. So that's why oftentimes we have to review what the pre-intake paperwork has. And the clinic can reduce the frustration by explaining why the information is needed and making the forms easier to understand as well.
Absolutely. So, what can a patient do at check in to help the process?
Arrive on time. Sometimes patients show up late for whatever reason, not blaming the patient. There could be traffic, there could be a holdup at the front desk. So that backs things up. Bring your identification, your insurance information is needed. Please complete your pre intake forms. That helps out significantly. Again, bring your medication list, note symptoms, and your preferred pharmacy, as mentioned earlier. If something is confusing, ask for clarification without waiting until the very end. That helps speed the process along as well.
Absolutely. And what can clinics do better at check in?
Of course, greet patients and with a smile. Acknowledge delays. Use plain language on forms. Protect privacy. Be clear about financial expectations when possible. Even saying you are checked in, the provider is running about 15 minutes late can reduce anxiety.
Now, let us talk about rooming and vital signs because this is where a medical assistant may take blood pressure, weight, temperature, pulse, and ask and take questions. What could possibly go wrong there?
Intake is meant to gather the key details you use your visit time well. It's normal to go on tangents when you're stressed or trying to explain the full story, but long side conversations during intake can unintentionally take time away from the provider addressing your concerns. A great medical assistant will redirect kindly to protect your time with the provider and keep the schedule respectful for the next patient. It's not about cutting you off. It's about making sure the most important conversation happens with the person you came to see, the provider.
The weight part, it is important. Some patients have, scale anxiety, and they may not want the number spoken out loud.
Whoa, Doc. I know I've put on a few pounds. You don't have to tell me what the scale says today.
That should be handled respectfully. Weight can be clinically important, though, for dosing, monitoring fluid changes, or tracking health risk. But the way it is handled really does matter. Staff can ask, would you like to know the number? Or would you prefer we record it privately? If a patient wants to decline, the staff should explain why it may be needed and involve the provider if appropriate.
hmm So, what can a patient say if the rooming process feels uncomfortable?
They can say, can we close the door before I answer that? Can you please not say my weight out loud? Can I sit quietly for a few minutes before my blood pressure?
Mhm.
Or I brought my medication list. Would you like to review it with me? Those are respectful and appropriate requests.
Absolutely. So, medication reconciliation is another big issue. If staff asks, any changes to your medication? A patient may panic because they don't remember the names and doses of all their medications sometimes.
Honestly, I don't really know the names of them. I just know which ones they are by the color of the pills.
That happens all the time. I can't tell you how many times people have told me, "Oh, I take the little purple pill or the little blue pill." That's why bringing bottles or actual photos or even a list helps. And staff can ask better questions too. Are you still taking this medication every morning? Did any doctor stop or add anything? Are you taking any supplements? Specific questions are easier to answer than broad ones.
Absolutely. So, the solution is not only patient preparation, it's also the clinic asking questions in a way normal people can answer.
Exactly. Health literacy is not only the patient's responsibility. Healthcare teams should communicate clearly.
So, I'd like to talk a little bit more about, provider conversations and listening and research. So, talk about the moment most patients are waiting for, which is the provider comes in. What is the biggest communication mistake providers make in that moment?
Entering too quickly and going straight to the computer can make the patient feel invisible. A better approach is to make eye contact, greet the patient, confirm the main concern, and then explain when you need to look at the chart or type.
Patients have also complained about being interrupted. Like they start explaining, and within seconds, they are redirected.
Well, now, see, providers sometimes interrupt because they're trying to narrow the problem. Sometimes patients can go off on a tangent or start talking about unrelated subject matter. But if we interrupt too early, we may miss the patient's real concern. A useful technique is to let the patient speak briefly, then summarize. Let me make sure I heard you. That shows listening and helps organize the visit and make it more structured.
Mhm. So, from the patient's point of view, it helps when the provider says the quiet part out loud. For example, we may not be able to fully cover all five concerns today, but we will identify what is most urgent and make a plan for the rest.
In many traditional clinics, visit lengths are often dictated by insurance billing rules, administrative demands, and financial pressure to see a high volume of patients. Even caring providers can feel forced to move quickly, which can limit how many concerns you can cover and how deeply they can be addressed. Direct primary care clinics like Hooked on Wellness is designed around quality, not volume. Because it isn't driven by insurance, we can keep patient volume lower and protect more time per visit. That means you get more space to ask questions, discuss multiple concerns, and leave with a clearer plan without feeling rushed.
What should a patient do if they feel like the provider is not understanding their main concern?
They can say respectfully, "I want to make sure I explained my biggest concern clearly," or "the thing I'm most worried about today is this," or "can I tell you what I'm afraid this might be?" That invites the provider to address the hidden concern.
Yes, oftentimes overlooked. That is a powerful because sometimes the symptoms is not the whole issue. The patient may be afraid, is it cancer, heart disease, dementia, infertility, or something they may have seen in their family? So it's very important to address it in that way.
Exactly. If we do not ask what the patient is worried about, We may answer the medical question, but miss the emotional question.
Absolutely. Let us talk about internet research. We kind of touched on it. Patients are going to search online. That's just the reality of the situation. But what is a healthy way for a patient to bring internet information into the visit?
Bring it in as a question, not a fight. Say, I read this and wondered if it applies to me. Or can you help me understand what this does or does not, why this does or does not fit my symptoms? That opens the door to education.
Yep. And what is a provider's responsibility?
Don't shame the patient. Even if the information is wrong, it's an opportunity to teach. A dismissive tone can make the patient stop sharing. A better response is, I see why that worried you. Let us compare your symptoms and the exam and what the literature, evidence based literature says.
Mhm. So that connects to shared decision making. What does shared decision making look like in a short visit?
It doesn't have to be long. It means explaining the diagnosis or possible causes in plain language. Give reasonable options, discussing benefits and risks, considering costs or access, and asking what matters most to the patient. It's really important to understand that the patient needs to be a participant in their healthcare
Mhm.
plan. They need to feel like this is a collaborative approach, that what they say and think matters to you as the provider, because ultimately it is their health and their decision. But sharing that decision together gets their buy in, and it also makes for better adherence.
And one thing also, before going further, it just makes me further stress the point with DPC. You usually create a relationship with your provider where that trust is there instead of having to go to the clinic or to a hospital and seeing somebody different every time. So, what kind of questions should a patient ask before they leave the room?
Ask, what do you think is going on? What else could it be? What are my options? What are the benefits and risks? What should I do first? What symptoms I what symptoms mean that I need urgent care? When should I follow up? And can you explain that in simpler language? A lot of this stuff is really complex to understand. And it just means that we need to take our time as providers to be more explicit and ensure that patients have a good understanding before they leave. And don't feel ashamed or embarrassed as a patient if you have questions. Take the time to get good understanding.
And use Teach Back.
Yeah. Teach back means that the patient repeats the plan in their own words. Here is what I'm going to do next. That is not a test of the patient. It's a test of how clearly we as the provider communicated to them.
And I love that. Teach Back is not the provider saying, "Did you understand?" Because many people will still say yes, even if they're confused.
Exactly. A better phrase is, I want to make sure I explain this clearly. Can you tell me, or can you tell me what you will do when you get home after the visit? This takes the shame out of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So many people think the visit is over when the provider leaves, but checkout can create a lot of confusion. What are the common problems at checkout?
Patients may be confused about follow up appointments, prescriptions, lab orders, referrals, imaging costs, and patient portals. Sometimes they wait again just to check out. Sometimes they get to the pharmacy and the prescription is not there. Those issues can undo all the good work that happened during the visit.
Hmm. And from the patient side, that can feel like being abandoned. You had a medical conversation, maybe got serious news, and then suddenly you're back at a window trying to figure out paperwork.
That's why a warm handoff matters. The care team should make sure the patient knows what happens next. If there's a prescription, confirm the pharmacy. If labs are ordered, explain when and where. If a referral is needed, explain who calls whom. If follow-up is needed, schedule it or explain the process.
Hmm. What should the patient verify before leaving the building or logging off a virtual visit?
Great question. Verify the plan, the pharmacy, the medication instructions, follow up date, lab or imaging instructions, referral steps, and how to contact the clinic if something changes. Also, ask what symptoms should prompt urgent care or an emergency evaluation. That's super important.
Mm. So the patient's final question can be, before I leave, can I confirm what I'm supposed to do next? That is simple and respectful.
Yes, it is. And clinics can support that by giving written instructions in plain language. People forget a lot when they are anxious, feel sick, or rushed. That's why, before we go further, I want to mention in my Be a A plus patient handout, I tell my patients, even when they come into the visit, have your folder, have a notebook, write down notes. Write down your questions of something that you didn't understand so they can be addressed before you leave. Just write down everything because I know myself, I'm forgetful too. And I'm a provider. And if you write things down, it just helps you be able to recall that information a lot easier.
Hmm. Also, whenever checking out, oftentimes billing and cost transparency are also common complaints. What is realistic to say here?
So, before we go into a lot of detail about that, again, I have to emphasize the difference between direct primary care and traditional medical offices. Traditional medical offices don't always know exactly how insurance will process a charge, but they can still communicate clearly. Now, with direct primary care clinics, the billing and the cost is very transparent. You know upfront what you're going to pay before you get the service. And regardless of which one you go to, patients can ask whether something may involve an additional cost, whether a lab is in network, and who to call for billing questions. Staff should not make patients feel embarrassed for asking this because this is important in today's society, the way healthcare costs have climbed.
Mm-hmm. That is important. Cost can determine whether a patient actually follows the plan.
Yes, a plan that a patient cannot afford or access is not a practical plan.
Mm-mm.
And when you have to choose between paying bills, paying for groceries, sometimes your medical needs are neglected. Patients should tell their provider if cost, transportation, work schedule, language, or family responsibilities create barriers
Mhm.
so that we can help them better manage their care.
Let us summarize solutions. First, from the patient point of view, what should every patient try to bring to a visit?
Okay, bring your purpose, your information, and your questions. Write top 1 to 2 concerns. Bring a symptom timeline. Bring medications or photos of bottles. Bring your allergies and reactions. Bring major history, surgeries, family history, and preventative care dates. Bring your preferred pharmacy and bring a willingness to ask for plain language. Advocate for yourself.
Hmm. And I would add, Bring humility and honesty. If you did not take the medication, say it. If you cannot afford it, say that. If the plan does not fit your life, say that. The provider cannot help with barriers they don't know about.
That's very true. Providers need accurate information, not perfect behavior. Patients should never feel they have to perform for the provider. We need the truth to make a safe plan.
Now, from the provider and clinic side, what are the high impact communication habits?
Start with presence. Make eye contact. Validate the concern. Set the agenda. Take the initiative. Explain what you're doing on the computer. Communicate that. Use plain language. Ask what the patient is worried about. Discuss options. Use teach back and close the loop before the patient leaves.
Mhm. And staff interactions matter too.
Very much so. Front desk staff, medical assistants, nurses, billing staff, checkout staff all shape the patient experience. A patient may forgive a delay if they feel informed and respected, but silence, rude tone, and confusion create distrust.
Absolutely. So let us give viewers some exact phrases that they can use.
Can you explain that in a simpler way? I want to make sure I understand. Here's what I'm going to do next. Is that right? What should I watch for? When should I follow up? Is there a lower cost option? Can we close the door before I answer that? Please don't say my weight out loud.
Mhm. And providers can say, I hear you. That sounds frustrating. Let me make sure I understand. Here's what concerns me most medically. Here are our options. What feels realistic for you? I want to make sure I explained this clearly.
Yes, that's all true. Those phrases build partnership. They do not add a lot of time and they can change the whole tone of the visit, as I've learned over the years.
The big lesson is that preparation is not about making the provider's job easier at the patient's expense. It is about making the patient's limited time more useful.
Yes, prepared patients are empowered patients. Clear communicators are safer providers. Both sides benefit from this.
Absolutely.
We here at Hooked on Wellness want to thank everybody for watching this episode. I hope you all got something out of it that you can actually use in your everyday life. And I just want to just say again, emphasize that in this whole healthcare journey that we're all going in, from the doctor's point of view, and hopefully from the patient's also, what we really want is the best outcome for you.
Yes, and if you enjoyed this material, you found it helpful and useful, take it, share it with friends, families, and loved ones. Be a solution to the healthcare problem and share it with everyone and help promote healthcare literacy and educating people.
All right. Y'all take care.